Let's go to some more good economic news. Just recently, let's pull this up here. The Federal Reserve has done something that I have been waiting for quite some time now. And for some reason, I don't see this article. Do you guys see this? Well, all right. So the article's not pulling up, but I know enough about it to discuss it. The Federal Reserve had just cut interest rates by half a point, 50 basis points, and this is something that a lot of people have been waiting for because this affects interest rates when you're buying a car, when you're buying a home, credit card rates, all this stuff. This is something that a lot of people have been waiting for. So a lot of people confuse the economy and interest rates. And because they confuse the two, they think that the economy was bad because interest rates were high. Now, it is logical and reasonable to make that assumption, but economically, and if you look at the economic numbers, that just was not true. Because if you look at a lot of the economic numbers, the unemployment rate was under 4% for 2 straight years, which had not been done in 50 years. It is now up over a little bit over 4%, which is average, which is a good numbers to be at. We obviously want the unemployment rate to be as low as possible, but the unemployment rate through the pandemic, through high inflation, somehow stayed low. Record low, by the way, for 2 straight years, or at least for the last 50 years. The GDP had risen over the last few years. The stock market has closed today at an all-time high. The S&P closes at an all-time high. Every economic number, the wages outpaced the inflation, which again is a rare event. What everybody expected after COVID was that we were going to go in a bad recession. There were going to be tons of job losses, which there were in the beginning. And a lot of the job losses came because COVID hit and a lot of businesses shut down. So they furloughed employees or they just basically cut them out and let them go. And, there were a lot of jobs lost. But as we started to open back up and the economy started to open back, or the businesses started to open back up, not only did we get all of those jobs back, we added an additional 12, 13 million jobs on top of that. So everything that happened economically since COVID has just been pretty remarkable. Now, the interest rates, unfortunately, stayed high, and that affected, again, like I said, the mortgage rates, which is near and dear to my heart because that's what I do for a living. That affected me probably more than anybody else's job in the country. But did I run and blame whoever the president was? I didn't. And I did not blame them because I just want to say I'm a Democrat and I don't want to blame the Democrat. If there was reasonable logistical argument to make that Joe Biden was specifically responsible for high interest rates, let me know exactly what that is. But if you do let me know what that is, my guess is that it's going to come from some biased, ridiculous notion that he is responsible for it, and that I would maybe have to accuse you because the president doesn't set the interest rates. That comes from the Federal Reserve. Now, if you want to blame the Federal Reserve as to whether or not they should have lowered the interest rates a while ago, which I think they should have, actually, the one thing that I have said is that I think the Federal Reserve lowered the rates too low. I think they panicked and they over responded to COVID. And so what happened is that they lowered these interest rates down to zero. And when you did that, we had a record low in mortgage rates. So what happened was is that every single person that had a mortgage at 4 or 5% refinanced down to 2.5, 3%. So now all these people are in these interest rates at 2.5, 3%, and none of them are selling their houses. And the reason why is because they're like, why would I sell my house when I'm in such this low interest rate and sell my house and go back into an interest rate that's at 7.5%? So now that the rates are coming down, it's going to spark interest. It's going to spark the market again. Not going to do it instantly. Maybe it's going to spark the interest because they hear the news, but we're not going to get the rates down to where we want to be. Quite frankly, we'd like to be in that 4.5, 5% range is what I would like to see, but I think it's still going to take us a while to get there. But anyway, we had good news in the interest rates coming down. And no, this did not happen just because there's an election. I know people like to say that and people like to think that, but that's just simply not true. The Federal Reserve does not work based on election cycles. They work on a particular formula that has been enacted for decades on how to combat inflation. And quite frankly, the Federal Reserve overall did a really good job on combating the inflation that was caused by COVID. There were other factors that caused some inflation, but I know a lot of people like to think Donald Trump was in charge, inflation was low. Joe Biden took over, inflation was high. Doesn't work that way. There's a lot of people who don't like to use nuances in things like this. But anyway, the inflation is now under 3%. This is where the Federal Reserve wanted to get it to. And this is the reason why they are starting to cut the interest rates. So again, economically, the country is doing fantastically. It is doing better than every other country that was affected by COVID throughout the entire world. So anybody that is complaining about the economy, and I think this is what bothers me a lot, is people are like, I'm voting based on the economic numbers, that I think Trump is better for the economy than Biden or Harris is going to be. That just simply isn't true. You can listen to economic experts when they look at different tax plans, when they look at the plans overall for Trump and for Harris. Economic experts, economic laureates, 16 of them, in fact, came out and said that Harris's plan is much better than Donald Trump's plan for the economy. I, again, I've always say, don't listen to me, but kind of listen to me. And the reason why I listen to me is because this isn't just something I'm conjuring up in my brain. This isn't just something I want to happen because I like Democrats. I vote for Democrats because for years, 20 plus years, I've read, I have studied, I have done as much as I possibly can to shape the reasons why I vote. And the reasons why I vote are much more compatible on the Democratic side than they are on the Republican side. The way I see it is that the Republican side cares mostly about ultra rich people and getting them more money. This is exactly why you're going to hear Republicans say that climate change, that professional scientists, 99% of scientists are saying that this is a real thing and that we need to be careful. But Republicans and their billionaire friends are putting together a $1 billion campaign to fool people into thinking that climate change is a hoax. Because if climate change isn't a hoax and we have to believe that, guess who that hurts? The $1 billion oil companies. So, I mean, I don't know. It's like I said, this is exhausting. And I just hope that more and more people do a little bit more investigating. I'm again, I've said this a million times. I'm happy to have people come into the comments, email me, tell me where I'm wrong, and tell me that it is better to have Republicans in there who side with these billionaires and that climate change is a hoax and that price gouging is communism and that Haitians are invading the country and eating our pets and that the election was stolen despite zero proof. I mean, just explain to me and maybe you could get me to change my vote. I'm happy to look at it.